Welcome back to Duckman Cycles and VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. We're here today with my 1968 Fastback, and it's time to change the clutch cable on it. Now, how do I know that? Not because the clutch cable has broken, because the clutch actually still works. It just doesn't work well anymore. And what happens is every time that I adjust the clutch cable, I tighten it up a little bit, it seems to always manage to get loose. And that wing nut on the bottom, back by the transmission, isn't what's coming loose. It's actually the cable is stretching. That's one of the first symptoms of a cable about to go bad. What happens is some of the strands on it break, so gradually the remaining strands will unravel themselves and start to stretch out until eventually they go beyond the point of their limit of stress, and then they break too. But we're attacking this one preemptively. I can't wait to see what it looks like inside. But the clutch cable has been good for about 3 years, and last couple months it's been starting to get really, really bad. I pushed that clutch all the way to the floor, and it's really tough to push that thing into first gear when I'm stopped. I have to actually let the clutch back out, push the clutch back to the floor, and then it'll allow me to put it in first. But sometimes it'll grind, even though I'm not moving. So clearly something is wrong. It's also difficult to get it between gears while I am moving, let's say from first to second, and that's again a symptom of a bad clutch cable. So we're going to attack this thing. I bought a new clutch cable for it. Now this clutch cable, they are all the same as far as principle is concerned, whether it be a Beetle, a Karmann Ghia, a Thing, or any one of the Type 3s. However, you must observe that they do come in different lengths. This one is a 2,333 millimeter cable, and this is the one that's intended for this car. Now again, you can't use this cable on all of them, so be sure that you observe and you get the right one for your year of vehicle. But the installation procedure is nearly identical all the way across the board. So stay tuned with me here, and we'll demonstrate how to do this. Now please, 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 please like, comment, and subscribe. Pluck that little dingleberry next to the subscription button. That gives you updates every time I upload a new video. If you guys are watching and you like these videos, please post a comment. I'd love to hear from you. As always, I do have multiple YouTube channels. Besides Duckman Cycles, I also have VV the Duck VV. I've also got Skeeter the Duck. So if you like watching my videos, you don't want to miss a thing. So please subscribe to all my channels on Facebook. In the search box, type in Duckman Cycles VW Garage and join the group. There'll be a discussion about clutch cable changing, as well as a bunch of other topics related to this, the Doodle Bastard, or the CR500, or anything else that anybody else is working on they have decided to share. Currently, we have just about 200 members, and it's constantly growing. And here's something I've never given away before. For those of you that want to reach me directly that aren't interested in any of the social media services that I've got, please email me. My email address is duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Once again, that's duckmancycles@duckshit.net. I'm not going to put that in print anywhere. That will not be in the video description at the bottom of this video. However, I will describe the cable and what parts it took, and any additional tools or anything typically in my videos I will demonstrate down in the descriptions, as well as the first pinned comment on this video. So thanks again for watching, and let's get this clutch cable changed out. Beep beep. Okay, you're going to need some tools to do the job. First thing, the most obvious thing, is going to be your clutch cable. You're probably going to want either a screwdriver or a wrench to remove your throttle cable. Yes, the throttle cable is going to have to come off in this case. You're going to need a ratchet, an extension. We're probably going to use the shorter one of the two. Probably a 17 millimeter socket. The 17 millimeter socket will be what removes your pedal assembly. Sometimes on older cars I've found 15s. Sometimes if some idiot worked on it before, it could be a 16, it could be an 18. I've even seen 19s on here before. So you're going to have to experiment with the size of this socket, but 17 is the size it usually is. You're also going to need, optionally, some baling wire. This makes the job a lot easier, and you don't have to have it, but I have a baling wire twister here. I forget what this is called, but this pair of pliers will actually do the twisting of the wire, and it just makes the job a lot easier. Do you have to have it? No, you can do it with a regular pair of pliers or even a pair of vice grips. Of course, you're going to want a rag, some grease, and it would be nice to have a set of rubber gloves just to keep the grease off of your hands. First thing you need to do is take a look inside of your engine compartment, locate your throttle cable. In the event of the Type 3, it's actually this nut right here, which will allow you to pull that cable out. You're going to want to stop this little holdfast from falling in. And you want to put this little guy in a safe place. Make sure you don't lose it. In my case, I'm going to put it right there so I know where it is. In fact, I'll put the wrench with it too because I'm not going to need that again. Now, if you have a Beetle, your carburetor might come up in the center and your throttle cable will go through the fan shroud, in which case you'll find a very similar device to this. It may have a flathead screw on it, in which case just loosen it up, slide it out, pull your throttle cable out. You don't have to remove the carburetor or anything crazy. The easiest way to get to your wing nut, which is on the end of the clutch cable, is by removing the rear driver's side wheel. So you want to jack up the car, put a jack stand underneath it, get that wheel off of the car, and we'll have a look to see if we can reach that wing nut from up underneath. If you have a Beetle, Karmann Ghia, Thing, or any Type 3, you'll find it in the same spot. Alright, first we need to remove our try not to make as much noise as I just did. Let's get these lug nuts loose. Yes, I do have 2 different sized lug nuts on here. This was something that I did when I converted this rear to disc brakes. So you're probably going to notice that when I pop off this wheel, it's going to look different than what you've got if you don't already have disc brakes. Alright, we're going to get the car jacked up. Got the jack underneath the torsion bar. Of course, make sure you're in gear. Make sure your parking brake is on before you get into this. And it's also a wise idea to chock 1 or 2 of your front wheels at the same time. Okay. This is a swing axle suspension, which is why the car was doing all kinds of wobbly stuff. It's rather typical of a swing axle. Alright, put our jack stand underneath. Make sure we're secured. Alright, we are effectively in place. And now we want to remove our lug nuts the rest of the way. Got to get some more of these acorn style nuts. I don't remember why I put on the other style nuts. I think there was something wrong with the acorns when I converted this to the disc brakes. Can't for the life remember why I did that. These actually have American threaded nuts. These are not metric. And I don't know why that is, but that's the way the disc brake kit comes. So the Volkswagen nuts don't work on here. Nuts off, wheel off. Put it in a safe place, out of your work area. Or in my case, I like to put it under my ass. Gives me something to sit on while I'm working. Alright, as you can see, I've got disc brakes on here. This whole arrangement is probably different than what you've got, but that's not going to matter because we're not touching the disc brakes. We're not working anywhere near them, as a matter of fact. We just needed the wheel off for clearance. The clutch wing nut is above here. Yeah, that's it right there, dead center in the screen. That's your clutch wing nut. Now, I've got really big hands and really thick arms, and this is really hard to do on video, but this clutch wing nut, you'll have to loosen it and remove it. Now, it's the same, once again, on Type 1, on a Karmann Ghia, on a Thing, or any Type 3, that's where you're going to be finding your clutch wing nut. Remove that sucker. But, because this is a Type 3, I've got an easier way. Keep that in mind. Come with me. From inside of your engine compartment, you have some cooling tin right here. This is funny because the screw that's off to the left side here that holds this tin down, it actually broke off. So what this allows me to do, and you can probably see it now, as long as this wire is up and out of the way, you can see that clutch wing nut. Really easy to get to. With a good long extension and this nice socket, I could put it right over that wing nut and effortlessly, without having to reach my hand into any sharp, dangerous location. It's dirty, it's hot, and I can actually just remove this wing nut. And it's good sometimes to count your number of turns if you're going to keep the same clutch cable, but in our case, I'm going to actually remove and replace this cable. So this one is stretched out, so the number of turns probably won't be the same as the new cable that's going back in. Don't do what I just did. I just dropped the nut down into the engine compartment. Well, actually, it fell down between the transmission and the frame horn. Oh, lucky me. It actually didn't get hung up underneath the car in a precarious location, which would be difficult to get to. It actually fell and hit the ground, so put this in a safe spot. Got to put it with my throttle bits. We're done under here now. Now we need to go up front and remove the pedal cluster. Normally on a Type 3, there's actually a piece of tin that sits underneath these pedal cluster, and with the carpet it makes it look really nice. On Karmann Ghia things or even Beetles, they don't have that. And in this case, I actually lost my tin. I put it somewhere in the garage and I haven't been able to find it, so I never bothered to put it back on. But next we just need to remove the pedal cluster, not worrying about that tin. Normally I'd be attacking this from the driver's side, but because the camera is in that location, it's not possible for me to do so. But there's a nut, well I should say a bolt, right here. And yes, it is a 17. And we want to get that loosened. And then there's one on the back side of the pedal cluster. There's our first bolt. Alright, and there's our other bolt. We also need to pull out the throttle cable from the pedal cluster. It's got this little Z-shaped end on it, so it's just a matter of wiggling it out of place. Got the stick shift into my neck right now, and it's making it hard to enunciate words. On the brake pedal is actually a little clip, which is easily accessible. Oh, my roller throttle came off there. Okay, we'll have to reassemble that too. Using just a flathead screwdriver or even a pair of needle nose pliers, you can pull that clip out. Alright, there's the clip. Push rod assembly should slide off the pedal cluster. Here's the push rod. Took the rubber boot with it from the master cylinder also. Not a big deal. Okay. Now we'll try to pull the pedal cluster out. Okay. This little hook right here is where the clutch cable normally attaches to inside the tunnel. We'll have to lubricate that hook properly before this goes back in. Now the cable is going to come out through this hole. There it is. I gotta come around the driver's side. Alright, there's the clutch cable pulled out of the tunnel. It was difficult to get my fingers in there to hook it and pull it out. Once I got it to where it's at, it's a lot easier to get your hands wrapped around it and yank the whole cable out. I expected to find it a little frayed right there at the end, and it's not. So I might have another problem, but that's irrelevant with how to change a clutch cable. So we're going to continue changing this clutch cable anyway, just because I don't trust it. And if my new cable continues to seemingly stretch like this old one did, then I'll start investigating some other areas. Anything that could make the transmission move closer to the pedal assembly would be making the cable looser. So anyway, those are the things I need to look at. But again, that's irrelevant to how to change a clutch cable. So we're going to stay on this and remove that one and put the new one in place. Alright, as I was saying, I expected the cable to be frayed or broken right here where it meets the clutch pedal assembly, and it doesn't seem to be that way. This is the new clutch cable that I'm going to put in. I'm going to replace it anyway since we got it all apart, but you want to make sure that both of these are the same length. And it's usually not a good idea to rub your hand along the length of these things because you'll find what they call the asshole of the wire, where you get that one little wire strand that sticks out that cuts the ever-living shit out of you. So anyway, what I just did was very foolish. Don't copy it. Looking at these two cables here, old one is a little bit bent, a little bit twisted, so it actually seems a little bit shorter as a result. But they're almost a centimeter difference, but the new one is a centimeter longer, so that shouldn't be a problem. Just a matter of tightening the nut just a little bit, and then for whatever is bent that the old cable has in it, should be pulled out straight. So the cable's fine. This is a good length, and it's good to check that before you go and put in the cable and you discover that they packaged the wrong unit. And one of the next things we need to do is get this cable greased up. Now, it's not a smart idea to grease this up before you put it in the car, because what's going to happen is it has a tendency to unwrap and unravel itself, and it's just going to get grease all over you, all over the interior. It's just going to be everywhere. So you just want to put a little grease on the end of it, and then you want to get it shoved up inside the tunnel in the tube that it goes in. And then while you're feeding it in, continue to grease it inch by inch. This is where the rubber gloves come into play. Now you want to make sure that your cable, which is right here, this guy, you can see it, it's that long shiny bit, is coming through the Bowden tube, and I actually just stuck it through the transmission lever back there. It's not important that you do that just yet because you're actually going to need some slack up front, so do not put your wingnut on yet. This was just to make sure that it came through. The Bowden tube which is that tube that you see right there, which that cable is passing through. You know, maybe you can't really see it. Yeah, it is the end of it right there. That's the tip of it, right at the end here. That tube, sometimes it's a little tricky to get that cable through there. If it doesn't want to go through, mine went right through. If it doesn't happen, take the Bowden tube off, straighten it out, and put it over the cable manually, and then reinstall the tube. In my case, I got lucky, it pushed right through. Right here on the end of the brake pedal assembly, you want to examine this. When these wear out, this little hook that you see right here, when that wears out, it begins to dig deeply into this. And when these start to wear out, and I've done this before, the hook will break off. And there didn't used to be replacement parts manufactured for this, but there actually is now. But this hook should be pretty much the same thickness all the way around, and this one is. So this one is actually okay. But in this hook, get some nice grease in there before you hook your cable onto it. And this is important because you're going to try to stop that from wearing out. Now the next thing is that cable that's way over there, that little loop needs to go over this hook. And once you've got it over that hook, then you need to use that mechanics wire that we talked about earlier to tie the two of them together, so when you slide the pedal assembly inside that hole in the hump, that the cable doesn't just fall off. And trust me, if you've done this before, you'll know what I mean, how frustrating it is that you get that far and the damn thing just falls off. Now I'm going to do the best that I can here to try to get this on video. It's a little hard to get the camera in here, but we're going to give it a shot. Let's see what we got. Alright, we've got the cable attached to the end here. A little bit of mechanics wire on there that's stopping it from falling off. Put it into the tunnel very delicately, because it still could come off. Now we're in. Now we want to go back to the back of the car, and we want to pull on that cable a little bit to make sure that it gets nice and snug. Now that we've got the pedal assembly in place, we need to put our bolts back in. So hopefully you've been smart enough to keep your tools and bolts and everything else within reach, which I didn't. Time to put those bolts in. It doesn't matter if you put in the front one or the back one first. I'm sure somebody will have a different opinion. And one thing you want to make sure you don't do is let this clutch pedal fall to the floor. If it falls this way, what's going to happen here is the clutch cable may come undone inside the tunnel. Even if you have it wired, it still may come undone. And there is a brake pedal return spring here too. You want to make sure that it also is wrapped around the brake pedal the right way. Now the brake pedal is okay to fall to the floor briefly, but it's going to have to be up and in position before you can get that bolt into place. And if it helps you to see what you're doing, get our ratchet on there. The brake pedal return spring is doing what it's supposed to do. We want to get this rod put back on. This is the brake pedal push rod. It needs to go, and this has the rubber boot. It unfortunately came off of there, but we're going to put it all into the master cylinder at the same time. There we go. Alright, that's good. Now we've got a clip over here. It also needs to go back on. And then lastly, we need to put the return spring on. This can be a little bit tricky. Need to reattach the throttle cable, which is this little zigzaggy guy over here. Colt 45 and throttle zigzag. Baby, that's all we need. Alright, got that back in there. And I'm missing the clip to my roller. This is the little roller here. It belongs on the end of this throttle, but it's missing a piece. The little clip that holds it on isn't there. So anyway, I'm going to have to find a clip or improvise and put something else in its place. I think what I'm going to do here is use a little bit of this mechanics wire, also known as baling wire. And for those of you that have been listening that are annoyed by the terms that I use, because they're different from your own. Actually, that worked just fine. Very nice. We are just about done up here. The only thing left that really would need to be adjusted would be the pedal level height, but that's already been done. So we need not worry about the pedal level height anymore additionally. That was done before I even took it apart, and I know that's comfortable where they're at. So we're going to leave them be. One is just a little bit higher than the other, but that's splitting hairs. It doesn't bother me. I mean, it's less than 1/8 of an inch, so hell with it. Let's go to the back of the car and start reconnecting our cables. We're going to start with the throttle cable first. Our throttle cable is this one right here in the center. It goes around just like that. And then this little holdfast that goes on the end of the cable has to fall down inside the hole. This is difficult to do and get the camera to see it at the same time. And then the cable has to be fed through the hole that's in it, just like that. Now what I like to do is I like to push the throttle linkage so it's in the idle position as tight as it'll go, and pull on the cable at the same time. And this is the position that I would then tighten the holdfast nut in. Alright, we should have a working throttle again. It's got a little play in it, which is good. What we'll do is we'll step on the throttle inside and we'll put a brick on it, and we'll look down inside the carburetors, and we'll make sure that the carburetors are actually open all the way to full throttle. Now there are other ways to do this. Some people like to put more slack in the cable. I've always worked this way. I've never had a problem, probably because I don't stomp on the throttle when I hold it to the floor. I don't crush it, which is the reason why I've never broken a throttle cable that I've installed. I have broken many that other people had installed, but they were usually rusted on the end and they broke right here in the engine compartment. So it's hardly my fault. Alright, last thing we need to do is we need to get this wing nut back on the clutch cable, which is behind this piece of sheet metal here. Now because I have the easy way to do this, I can actually do this without having to get under the car. It makes it a whole lot easier if you take a socket, and this one is just a 17mm deep wall, and you want to wedge it down between the engine case. As big of a guy as I am, it's really not fun to work in such a tight, closed environment. Of course, I gotta drop the damn nut where it's hard to reach. Alright, we got it on. There's the wing nut. And that's the socket falling out. That was holding the clutch lever in place. Alright, we're in a good position right now where we're about ready to use my tool to snug this sucker up. So we got that split socket, once again. Put this right onto here. And the big question is how do you know when you're done turning? And the answer is you gotta look at the clutch pedal deflection. Clutch pedal deflection is the amount of free play that you feel before you hit resistance. So how to measure that is you put your tape measure against the bulkhead, and you get your measurement on the back side of that pedal. In my case, well, it's exactly 8 inches. And I'm pushing it in, and I'm at 6.5. So that's about 1.5 inches of free play. And you want roughly between 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. And the way to adjust that is tighten up that wing nut a few more times in the back until you fall in within that measurement. So we're going to go ahead and hit that right now, a couple more turns. And if that's all good, put the wheel back on, and we're done. Alright, we're at exactly 1/2 inch. There it is. Clutch pedal is now properly adjusted. Alright, it's time to put that wheel back on. And it's starting to get dark out here. Even though I started this with plenty of time to get it done, the phone kept ringing with all kinds of work-related nonsense. And I'm sure you can relate. People just won't leave you alone on your day off. Ouch. Pretty easy to tell that I'm getting frustrated and tired. And I'm not even frustrated with this. This replacing clutch cable nonsense was actually the easy thing to do today. Stand out. Whoa, that went down fast. Alright. Now I like to torque these lug nuts down to about 80 foot-pounds. I'm not sure what the stock specification is, but seeing as how these are neither stock lug bolts nor stock lug nuts, that's the specification that came on these, so that's how we're going to tighten them down. Check your manual for whatever you've got. If you got a 5-lug, 4-lug, if you got Porsche studs, check your manual for what you need to tighten them down to. Easy as that. And put your hubcap back on. Finish cleaning up your mess. and you're ready for a test ride. Well, I can tell you right now that this clutch pedal feels fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So apparently it had been a problem for a long time. It just didn't occur to me that there was such an issue. But when I step on it now, you can feel when it goes beyond a certain point where the clutch disengages, it actually gets a little easier, which is the same as I would experience on any car that I've ever owned. Now the throttle cable doesn't feel quite right. Another thing's for certain too, the clutch pedal is easier to press, a lot easier. Now I put a stage 1 racing clutch in here, so I figured for sure that that would have made it more stiff. But after I put that in, that clutch pedal was extremely stiff, stiffer than I remembered it should have been. Now I don't know if it's just because I lubricated it or what, but it's definitely a huge difference from what it was. But now the throttle cable is misadjusted. Yeah, the throttle doesn't feel quite right. I'll have to make an adjustment back there on that one. There's also a possibility I may have bent the linkage. And this car has that stupid push-pull linkage that's very, very easily affected. And I did lean on it a little bit, so if I bent it ever so slightly, that would knock the carburetors all out of sync. But the pedal, gas pedal, feels like it's a little lower than it normally is. It's probably not opening up all the way when I get on it either. But the clutch is just, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It feels like a new car. That's probably the best way to describe it. Before it was stiff, really stiff, but it felt mushy. It didn't have a mechanical feeling to it. It felt like I was stepping in a bucket of marshmallows. Very firm marshmallows, but just marshmallows. It didn't feel mechanical. Anyways, I'm much happier with this than the way it was. So please like this video, give me a thumbie, comment, subscribe, pluck that little dingle belly next to the subscribe button so you get updates every time I upload a new video. And please don't forget to check out my Facebook page. Type in Duckman Cycles into Facebook and find it and join that group. There'll be a discussion about this video as well as others. And don't forget to subscribe to my other YouTube channels. Besides Duckman Cycles, we also have VV the Duck VV and Ski to the Duck. Give them a couple of subbies, show them the love, and don't forget. That way you won't miss a thing. Wow, that was a huge friggin' rat. I wonder if the video caught that. I thought it was a rabbit. Thanks for watching.